the urgent question. Shadow Minister Alicia Kearns.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government if he will make a statement on the released unredacted plans for the proposed Chinese embassy.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This question relates to the proposals for a new Chinese embassy at Royal Mint Court. This is a decision to be taken by planning ministers independent of the rest of government. As I've said before in this House, this government is committed to the probity of the planning process at all levels to ensure robust and evidence-based decision-making. Planning ministers must take decisions following a quasi-judicial process, meaning they must take decisions fairly, based on evidence and planning rules. As the case is currently before the Department for consideration, and due to ministers' statutory role in the planning process, it would be entirely inappropriate for me to comment further on this live case. That said, Mr Speaker, I understand fully members' interest in the case, and so I can briefly set out the process this case has followed to date. A public inquiry into the applications was held by an independent planning inspector between the 11th and 19th of February 2025. The Department received the inspector's report into the applications on the 10th of June that year. On the 6th of August 2025, a reference back letter was sent to parties seeking further information, specifically in respect of the redacted plans and some issues raised by the Home Office and Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office from parties, and that was recirculated for further comment on the 22nd of August and again on the 16th of October, 2nd of December and 17th of December, and recirculated for information on the 6th of January 2026. Referring back to parties is routine when further information is required. The Government does not provide a running commentary on planning casework decisions, as you know, Mr Speaker, and it would be particularly inappropriate to make any comment on material which has been received. The reference back material will be available on request when the decision is issued. The timetable has been varied to allow full consideration of the applications, given the detailed nature of the representations provided and the need to give parties sufficient opportunity to respond. A final decision will now be made on or before the 20th of January 2026. The variation to the timetable is routine when additional time is needed for determination. Members can be assured, and I'm afraid, Mr Speaker, I will be required to state the following ad nauseam, that ministers will take all material planning considerations into account when the final decision is made, and ministers will inform the House of the decision accordingly.
Furthest, as you brought me into it by saying, as I would know about planning, absolutely. But I didn't choose for you to be the minister that answered this. I would have thought, actually, it would have been the Home Office and the Security Minister. So please, Alicia.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It is very disappointing to get a technocratic history lesson rather than answer to the meaningful question.
Exactly.
208 secret rooms and a hidden chamber just 1 metre from cables serving the City of London and the British people. That is what the unredacted plans tell us that the Chinese Communist Party has planned for its new embassy if the government gives them the go-ahead. Indeed, we now know they plan to demolish the wall between the cables and their embassy, cables on which our economy is dependent, cables carrying millions of British people's emails and financial data, an access that would give the Chinese Communist Party a launchpad for economic warfare against our nation. The Home Office and the Foreign Office say security concerns have been addressed. So I put to the Minister, had any minister seen these unredacted plans before the Telegraph uncovered them? And if not, why not? Was Parliament misled when we were told that all documents were publicly available? Is it true that in December a briefing was given to Five Eyes partners on these risks? And does the Minister really have no concerns at all over plans to install heavy ventilation equipment parallel to these cables? What is that for? If the government is as shocked as we are today on this, have the ministers already called in the Chinese ambassador to explain these secret rooms? And if not, why not? The embassy would create a daily headache for our security services. What confidence can we have that the CCP's technological capabilities can be contained for a decade, let alone 10? I have consistently asked the government to require the Chinese to pay for any rerouting of cables if they're going to give this the go-ahead. So will the government commit to that today? The Prime Minister, we understand, is planning to visit Beijing this month. Is it true the embassy will be approved this week? That the Prime Minister plans to reward the Communist Party, holding a British national hostage, torturing him in confinement, who put spies at the heart of our democracy, is bad enough. To turn up with a gift in hand begging for handouts is beggar's belief, because Labour promised a new relationship with China, yet UK export goods are down 23%. Surrendering our security for Chinese trade was always a bad policy, but surrendering our security while exports plummet is frankly insanity. The government can claim today that they had no idea about these secret rooms, and we will take them at their word. But they cannot now say they have no power to protect us, protect our economy, protect the British people, deny the Chinese Communist Party their embassy.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Shadow Minister for her questions. I'm obviously not going to comment on speculation in the press. When it comes to the specific case that's before ministers, at the application stage, it was a matter for parties what information was put forward for consideration, and it was a matter for Tower Hamlets what information was put on the planning register and the inquiry website. We've not misled the House. All inquiry documents are publicly available on that website. If new, potentially relevant information is drawn to the Department's attention, it will be assessed. This includes consideration of its relevance and whether it's necessary to obtain that information or refer back to parties, and that is a routine process. The Secretary of State transparently sought further information on the redacted drawings via a reference back letter to parties issued on the 6th of August. I again say, Mr. Speaker, no decision has been made on the case. I cannot comment on individual aspects of the case. It would be entirely inappropriate for me to comment on any matter of national security or on behalf of the security services. All inquiry documents, including the redacted drawings put forward by the applicant at application stage, are publicly available on the Tower Hamlets website. When the final decision is published, the decision letter will contain a list of post-inquiry representations, including those received as part of the reference back exercise. These will be publicly available on request.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, multiple government agencies and government departments have raised concerns about this mega embassy. Our international partners have raised concerns about it. Every security briefing I had identifies China as a hostile state to the UK. I am in no doubt that this mega embassy should not be allowed to go ahead. Internationally, China is terrorising the people of Hong Kong. It is terrorising the democratic people in Taiwan, and it is terrorising some people already in the UK. I look to my local University of Sheffield Hallam, and I also look to what it's doing to parliamentarians right here. I want my government to stand up to bullies, not reward them. We need to be seeing rules, limits put in place around China to stop this behaviour, not rewarding them with the embassy that they so dearly want.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her questions. I note and appreciate her concerns. We need a consistent position on China, Mr. Speaker, which cannot be boiled down to one word. We recognise that China poses a series of threats to UK national security, and we challenge these robustly. China also presents opportunities to the UK as the world's second largest economy and the UK's third largest trading partner. We will therefore continue to develop a consistent and pragmatic approach to economic engagement without compromising our national security. On the matter of Hong Kong in particular, we will not tolerate any attempts by foreign governments to coerce, intimidate, harass or harm their critics overseas, especially in the UK. But on the matter before us, Mr. Speaker, which is the particular case in question, as I have stressed before, and I'm afraid I will have to do so repeatedly, no decision has been made. I cannot comment on any aspects of the case. It's a live case for planning ministers to determine. All material considerations will be taken into account when making a decision, but I'm afraid I can't comment on any specific national security concerns.
Calum, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The redacted plans for the Chinese super embassy provide new reasons to reject this application. Can the Minister confirm whether the Government had access before today to these unredacted plans showing the proximity of basements to critical communications cabling? And will he and other ministers ensure that the intelligence agencies update their risk assessments before a final decision is taken? On the 16th of December, the Government told this House that an urgent review would be launched into foreign financial interference in UK politics, including by China. So will the Minister now agree to pause any decision on the super embassy until the Rycroft review has reported? The new super embassy would also condemn Hong Kongers living in Britain to more surveillance, more intimidation and more bounty hunting. On Saturday, hundreds of Hong Kongers are expected to join a protest outside the proposed super embassy site. Will the Minister or a colleague meet with the protesters on Saturday outside the embassy to listen to their concerns firsthand?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his questions. I want to be very clear on what information the department had and when it had it. As I said, an independent inquiry into this matter was held by an independent planning inspector. The onus is on the applicant to submit documents to that inquiry. It is then at the gift of the department at the point the inspector's report was given to us to request via a reference back to parties further information. We did so on the 6th of August, specifically in respect of those redacted plans. And I'm not going to comment on live applications of the case. All material considerations will be taken into account. Just as similar, Mr. Speaker, it wouldn't be right for me to comment on the intelligence services or what input they've had into the decision. The National Security Minister is beside me here, who's taken this. A decision will be made on or before the 20th of January. At the point that decision is issued, the decision letter will contain, as I've said, a list of post-inquiry representations, including those received as part of the reference back exercise, and that will be publicly available on request.
Kumaran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. China has used their national security law to criminalise political dissent and target Hong Kongers in the UK. My constituency, Stratford and Bow, is home to one of the largest Hong Konger populations in our country. They tell me how scared this proposed Chinese mega embassy is in our neighbouring constituency in East London. What assurances can the Minister offer that this government, the British government, will stand up for the people of Hong Kong, and that this proposed embassy won't enable and embolden further coercion, further intimidation of Hong Kongers in the UK, particularly those in London?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question. I'd repeat what I said specifically, Mr. Speaker, about transnational repression. We won't tolerate any attempts by foreign governments to coerce, intimidate, harass or harm their critics overseas, especially in the UK. But on the matter of this decision that is before planning ministers, it will be taken independent of the rest of government. Planning ministers must take decisions following a quasi-judicial process, meaning, Mr. Speaker, they must make decisions fairly based on evidence and planning laws. And I stress again, all material considerations will be taken into account in reaching a decision.
Father of the House, Sir Edward Leigh.
This is the National Parliament, and it deserves answers. I've asked this question to the Minister sitting next to him already, and I got no answer at all. This may seem a subsidiary point, but it's important. On January the 14th, the Secretary of State wrote to the Chinese demanding an answer as whether there's going to be a perimeter wall so that the public can access the buried Cistercian monastery there. With typical arrogance, the Chinese haven't even replied. Now, why is this important? Because if ministers insisted on what they wrote about in January, there'd have to be an entirely new planning permission. So this site, near the Tower of London, where so many prisoners of conscience died over the centuries, who knows, maybe the prayers of medieval monks might finally stop this aberration.
Minister.
I'm afraid all I can say to the right honourable gentleman, who I have a huge amount of respect for, is that all material considerations will be taken into account in reaching a decision on this case.
I think Sobel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Joint Committee on Human Rights undertook an inquiry on transnational repression earlier this year. It found the Chinese state undertakes considerable transnational repression against the Chinese diaspora in the United Kingdom, much of it coordinated out of the existing Chinese embassy. This new super embassy is a real threat to Hong Kongers, to Uyghurs and other members of Chinese diaspora that don't toe the party line in Beijing. Can the Minister reassure me that transnational repression of the Chinese diaspora is a material consideration when making this planning decision?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. The Foreign Secretary has been robust on human rights, Mr. Speaker, including in Xinjiang. He's raised our concerns about the implementation of, for example, the national security law in Hong Kong, called for the immediate release of Jimmy Lai. We're forthright when it comes to human rights with the Chinese government. I am not going to, I'm afraid, comment on a live case in front of planning ministers as to what specific material considerations will be taken into account, but they all will be, I can assure my honourable friend.
Sir Julian Lewis.
The Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament had an opportunity to question not the deputy but the actual National Security Advisor about this matter. If the minister says he doesn't know, then he's the wrong minister to be answering this urgent question. If he says he does know but can't say because it's highly classified, let me assure him that the identity of witnesses who are interviewed at that level by the Intelligence and Security Committee is not private. It is published whenever the committee has a mind to do so. So will he answer that question, please, in a straightforward way? Were the ISC given the opportunity to question the National Security Advisor?
Minister.
Well, I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, it's for the ISC, not me, to comment on its proceedings. What I can tell the right honourable gentleman is that national security is, of course, the first duty of government. It won't be appropriate for me in this instance to comment on any specific matters of national security, but as I continue to repeat, all relevant planning considerations will be taken into account when making a decision on this case.
Rushanara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend will be aware of the concerns that I've written to the Secretary of State about, highlighted by my constituents, within which this embassy is proposed. Can he reassure me, while I recognise the planning dimension and the limits of what he can say, can he nonetheless reassure me and the House that the concerns of residents, the security and human rights concerns as well as wider local concerns, will be taken seriously as part of the process, not least because this is in an area with one of the largest Muslim populations in the country, and we are all aware of the persecution of Uyghur Muslims that this House has campaigned for among the wider human rights violations.
Minister.
Well, as I've said, Mr. Speaker, all material considerations will be taken into account when making the decision. It is open, Mr. Speaker, for any party to make representations on this case. A number of honourable members from across the House have done so, and all relevant planning considerations will be taken into account when reaching that decision.
Bobby Dean.
Mr. Speaker, I have to say I'm exasperated by the government's response to this urgent question today. They are treating this development as a mere wrinkle in a bureaucratic planning matter, and that is simply not the case. If this embassy was granted, it will represent one of the largest, most prestigious embassies held by any country in Europe, and that has huge diplomatic consequences. So can the Minister reassure us that it's not merely planning considerations that are being taken into account, but those of national security and diplomatic importance as well?
Minister.
All material considerations will be taken into account. They include matters of national security, but the decision is being taken by my department in line with statutory provisions governing planning decisions and published propriety guidance. The full reasons for the decision, as I've said, will be set out in the published decision letter. But as I continue to say, Mr. Speaker, no decision has yet been made.
Lynn Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the limitations in which the Minister on what he can and cannot say, but in light of the publication of the unredacted Chinese embassy plans, just to ask the Minister, will Government and Security Services look again as to whether it would be appropriate to allow the embassy to proceed?
Minister.
Well, I'm not going to comment, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the security services. I'm not going to do it. Chuntering from a sedentary position, it is not appropriate for me to comment on behalf of the security services. But as I continue to say, all material considerations can be taken into account. I'm here answering a question on the Chinese embassy, which is a decision for my department and planning ministers within it.
Sir Julian.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister's talked about this being a planning decision, but essentially it's a political judgment. And I think many people here want to strongly represent to the government and the National Security Advisor that this judgment call on getting a closer relationship with China and this embassy on this massive site, I went round it the last couple of days, Mansell Street is really restricted, it's going to be completely impossible to monitor what's going on there, that judgment is wrong.
Minister.
I note his concerns, and the National Security Minister and other ministers will have heard them too. But the case is specifically a planning decision to be made in accordance with the propriety rules and other considerations that planning ministers, as part of that quasi-judicial process, have to take into account. But all material considerations will be taken into account as part of that process.
Mark Seawood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I represent Chloe Chung from my constituency, and she has to live with the fact that she has a £100,000 bounty placed on her head under the national security law in Hong Kong. She walks around every day knowing that anyone here could claim that bounty by taking her to the Chinese embassy and handing her over to the authorities. And now she worries that she might find herself locked away in one of the secret rooms in the new embassy plans. What exactly is the government going to do to ensure that Chloe is protected and kept safe, and that this never happens to her or anyone else who has a £100,000 bounty placed on her head, if the new embassy is approved?
Minister.
Well, I recognise, Mr Speaker, my honourable friend's frustration, his anger on behalf of his constituents. We won't tolerate transnational repression of the kind he is concerned about. But what I would say specifically, the counterfactual here is not that the Chinese don't have an embassy. They have 7 diplomatic premises in the UK already. But again, I come back to the fact that we will make a decision on this case on the material planning considerations that pertain to it.
Bruce Law.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, every single day people from the Tibetan, Hong Kong, Uyghur and Falun Gong communities here in the UK already face intimidation from transnational repression. Their activities are under constant surveillance. Their families living under Chinese rule face arrest and prosecution. There's million-dollar bounties placed upon them, and their neighbours in the UK are encouraged to pass on information or deliver them to the Chinese authorities. So given the increased threat to their safety that this mega embassy poses, what action is the government taking to counter these actions, and what message does the government have for these communities?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. We have reviewed transnational repression through the Defending Democracy Task Force. We take it incredibly seriously. I've noted his concerns. I'm here on behalf of my department as the Housing and Planning Minister to make clear what the process is for making a decision on this embassy application.
Let you do it. James Dish.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This debate on the mega embassy isn't just about a building and 208 secret rooms. It's primarily about national security and the safety of those from the Hong Konger, Chinese, Uyghur and Tibetan diasporas in the UK, approximately 700,000 people. We've learned that in 2018, the then UK Prime Minister committed to no delays in granting permission for the mega embassy, which has an air of predetermination. So can I ask the Minister what reassurances he can give me and this House that that opinion hasn't compromised the independence of the planning process?
Minister.
The planning process hasn't been compromised. We will make a planning decision on the basis of the relevant propriety guidance. What I'd say to him about the delays that have taken place, given the detailed nature of the representations that have been provided, the need to give parties sufficient opportunity to respond, we've considered that more time was needed for full consideration of the applications. A variation to the timetable is routine when more time is needed for determination, such as when it is necessary to consider that additional information. But as I've made clear, our intention is to make a decision on or before the 20th of January this month.
Sir Desmond Swain.
Jimmy Leigh, a British subject's sentencing hearings are taking place. China has abrogated every agreement it made with us over Hong Kong. Yep. What outrage would China have to commit for us to deny any demand that they made? The minister said he could not distill our relationship into China down to one word. Oh, yes, we can. It's a very big word, Mr. Speaker. It's no.
Yeah. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the UK condemns the politically motivated prosecution of Jimmy Leigh. No state can bully and persecute the British people for exercising their basic rights. Following the court verdict, the Foreign Office summoned the Chinese ambassador to underline our position in the strongest terms, and we call again for Jimmy Leigh's immediate release.
Yeah. Christine Jordan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Minister is very artfully avoiding answering the question which my constituents in Edinburgh West, Hong Kong Chinese, Muslims, Tibetans, all over this country want to know, and it's not about the planning process. They are concerned about their safety, about the security, and that the redacted photographs show just how close a foreign country is to critical communications cables. That is their concern, that they want to know that they are safe and that this government is taking that into account. That is the question we want to ask. Please don't tell me about the planning process.
Minister.
With all due respect to the Honourable Lady, this is an urgent question in relation to plans that are part of a planning process. Now, I understand her frustration, but it was precisely to secure the information in question that a reference back was made to the parties on the 6th of August, and her constituents, Mr Speaker, can be reassured that all material considerations will be taken into account by the relevant minister when a decision is made on this case.
Dr Andrew Morrison.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I'm sure Tower Hamlets Building Control are very good, but they're not security experts. If this plan goes ahead, and I very much hope it doesn't, will the Minister at least assure the House that the agencies will be fully involved in monitoring the demolition of this wall along Mansell Street and round Wapping Exchange, and that the replacement too is monitored closely to ensure that our critical national infrastructure is safeguarded?
Minister.
I note the honourable gentleman's question. We don't comment, for obvious reasons, on intelligence matters. I can assure him that national security concerns will be taken into account. All the representations that have been made along those lines will be taken into account as part of the decision-making process. He says that Tower Hamlets don't have the relevant expertise to make the decision in the round. That's precisely why an independent public inquiry is held by an independent public inspector, the report passed to government, and the chance for government to seek further information through a reference back, as we have done on the 6th of August, so that the relevant planning minister in my department can take the decision on the basis of all the required information.
Paul Cullen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Minister asked for a planning question, so I'll give him a planning question. I'm struggling to think of an innocent reason why the important details will be redacted from the original application. So can the Minister tell me what explanation has been given for those redactions?
Yeah. Well, as I've said, Mr Speaker, it was precisely because the department did not feel it had all the necessary information to make a decision that we sought that further information via a reference back letter to parties. And as I continue to say, all material considerations will be taken into account when a decision is made.
David Reed.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To make the same mistake repeatedly is a form of stupidity. And as a country, we keep doing the same thing. So if we cast our mind back to the debacle with Huawei, we let the Chinese Communist Party essentially into our 5G network. We didn't listen to our national security advice, and we stopped and we pulled back. We've done the exact same with civil nuclear. We are making the same mistake again. So at what point does the Minister, who has responsibility for this, he can step in, he can pull the plug on this, at what point do they wake up and realise that we are just making the same mistake again?
Minister.
Planning ministers will make a decision taking into account all material planning considerations.
Lockhart.
Mr Speaker, the proposed Chinese embassy includes a subterranean facility just centimetres from cables carrying highly sensitive financial data. Any hostile intelligence service designing an espionage target would struggle to find a better location. Northern Ireland has learned that strategic assets must not be put at unnecessary risk for the sake of diplomatic symbolism. National security cannot be an afterthought. At a time when this House voices concerns about foreign influence online, we must also confront the real-world threat of hostile states exploiting our critical infrastructure. Will the Minister do the right thing and agree that national security should trump planning and therefore say no to this?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I simply can't provide a running commentary on what is a live case, but I can assure all honourable members that national security is the first duty of government generally, and that all relevant planning considerations will be taken into account when making a decision on this case.
Sobel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Minister has recognised that China poses significant threats, and yet this government is prepared to welcome this Trojan horse of an embassy in the heart of our city, so close to the link system. Now, he talks about material planning considerations, but that means balancing developing needs with community impact, ensuring the development aligns with local and national policies, and site-specific details like heritage, like the father of the house mentioned. Not one contribution in this House can say that this isn't a threat to national security and that this is in any way a good and solid planning application. So how can this government be so naive to accept it?
Minister.
No decision has been made on this case.
Luke Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I first of all thank the honourable member for Rutland and Stamford for submitting this question, but also, Mr Speaker, for granting another question on this issue. I do feel that whilst we're not happy with the answers yet, we have at least been given repeated chances to scrutinise it as it's progressed. So I'm here on behalf of Hong Kongers in Sutton Cheam and across London who are aghast at the prospect of this project being given permission. We've seen the persecution and conviction of Jimmy Leigh, transnational repression of Hong Kongers in the UK by, amongst other things, the withholding of their mandatory Provident Fund savings which allow them to survive here, bounties placed on activists, action against MPs, such as my honourable friend, the member for Bath, being stopped going into Hong Kong, and sanctions put on other MPs. If all these actions are rewarded by a hostile state being given permission to expand and increase their capabilities for surveillance, espionage and repression in our capital city, what hope can any of us have that the government will stand up against hostile states for Britain and Britons in an increasingly hostile and dangerous world?
Minister.
Well, I simply note, Mr Speaker, that all the points the honourable gentleman made could apply to the existing 7 diplomatic premises in the UK. When it comes to this site, as I've said, a decision will be made on or before the 20th of January. All material considerations will be taken into account. We remain steadfast in our support for the Hong Kong community in the UK. As I've said in answer to a previous question, we've undertaken a review of transnational repression as part of the Defending Democracy Task Force. We take it incredibly seriously.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. For the thousands of B&O people in my constituency of Solihull West and Shirley, the prospect of the Chinese super embassy is deeply, deeply worrying. This is compounded by the fact of these unredacted plans. With that in mind, can the Minister confirm whether any government minister has called in the Chinese ambassador to discuss these issues? And if they haven't, why haven't they?
I'm afraid to say to the gentleman, I cannot provide a running commentary on what is a live case. All material considerations will be taken into account when making a decision.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This is a complete farce, to be quite honest. We've seen these reports in the media that there will be a secret room less than 1 metre away from sensitive cabling. There's reports that since 2018 in China, the Chinese authorities have been cutting off utilities to the UK embassy there. National security should surely trump the planning system. This is a decision that should be taken by the Prime Minister in Downing Street. It should be a very quick and resolute no, and if the government is not in a position where it's able to do that, the framework needs to be changed. If necessary, the government needs to come before Parliament to do that, where they will find a very warm reception.
Mr Speaker, I don't think I could have been any clearer. All national security considerations will be taken into account when making a decision on this case.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'll offer the government some advice, and it's one word, and that is common sense. Common sense in the interest, well, you know, 2 words. But given the interest in national security, I'm quite surprised, really, that a planning minister is here to talk about this, because it's intertwined. So to rebut from other members about, oh, that's a security issue and it's not your portfolio, then I'll retract that. But given what we know, will the Minister review the proximity of other countries' embassies in to major underground fibre optic cables? Because this is a big worry for the country's intelligence services, and also a big worry for many constituents throughout the country.
Minister.
I note the concerns the honourable gentleman raises, Mr Speaker. I appreciate his frustration, but it is ultimately a planning case that a decision is being made on. But as I've said repeatedly to honourable members, all material considerations will be taken into account when reaching a decision on that case.
Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. London is a critical global financial centre. We all rely on it. All of our constituents rely on it. Does the Minister recognise the very serious risk that this Chinese super embassy, if passed, could pave the way for economic war, as my honourable friend, the Shadow Minister, said, not just on our country, but on the Western world, including by undermining the security of critical data travelling under the site to and from the City of London?
Minister.
What I would say to the honourable gentleman, as I've said to other honourable members, is that all national security considerations will be taken into account. He can be reassured on that fact.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Whatever statements have been made publicly, the unredacted plans for this super embassy will have our security services filled with dread, as well they should. Chinese Communist Party is not a friend to the United Kingdom. And nowhere is that more evident than consistent espionage, including on this very estate, and frequent cyber attacks against national infrastructure. Can the Minister tell the House, given that his department is responsible for this final decision, if he will do the right thing by national security and pull the plug?
Minister.
Well, I'm not going to comment on specific considerations that will be taken into account. I've been very clear, Mr. Speaker, that we will continue to develop a consistent and pragmatic approach to the China People's Republic. On economic engagement, we won't compromise our national security. I've been very clear that China poses a series of threats to UK national security, and as I've been as clear as I can be, national security considerations, along with all other material planning considerations, will be taken into account when reaching a decision, and it's for planning ministers to reach that decision, as I've said, on or before the 20th of January.
Ben Objective.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We seem to be here every 3 weeks to address espionage and security concerns with regards to China, be it spying, hacking, the government's failure to add them to the enhanced tier of furs. China is not an ally and features as a security threat in our own security strategy. The Chinese have previously stated that they wouldn't resubmit their application after it was rejected unless they were given assurances it would be approved. To that end, what assurances have been given to China? What are we expecting as a quid pro quo with regards to the rebuilding of our own embassy in Beijing? And what concerns have been raised by our Five Eyes partners, specifically the US?
Minister.
I appreciate why the honourable gentleman is tempting me on the matter, but as I've been very clear, it would be completely inappropriate of me to comment from this dispatch box on national security considerations in respect of this live case. On the specific question he asked about whether China has been given a commitment that permission will be granted, this decision is being taken by my department in line with statutory provisions governing planning decisions and published propriety guidance. But as I keep saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, no decision has yet been made on the case.
Jim Allister.
Why is this government so evidently in awe of the Chinese government and its requirements? And is one of those requirements that this mega embassy is approved before the Prime Minister visits Beijing?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I simply don't accept that characterisation of the government's approach to China. We've got to take a consistent and pragmatic approach, but we recognise that it poses a series of threats. But as I've said, no decision has yet been made on this case, and all material planning considerations will be taken into account when one is.
Joshua Reynolds.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I've raised the harassment of constituent of mine, Carmen Lau, by the Chinese authorities with the government multiple times. Bounty letters, deepfake pornography, her family interrogated by national security agents in Hong Kong. And every time I am told that the safety of Hong Kongers is the utmost importance to the government. So, given that, will the Minister accept that to approve this application, whilst China is still committing transnational oppression, will be a kick in the teeth to Hong Kongers such as Carmen?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the safety of Hong Kongers is of the utmost importance to this government, and we remain steadfast in our support for the Hong Kong community in the UK. I understand why the honourable gentleman is asking me, but I can't comment on what is a live planning case before planning ministers in my department.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's no coincidence that a week ago in a Protestant church in Chengdu, Sichuan province in China, was raided by Chinese authorities. The pastor was arrested, the elders were arrested, those who attended the church were arrested. So at the same time, what are we doing here? What is government doing here? The facts have revealed in those plans do show the potential for risk that must be explored. By all means, the Chinese should have a consulate to enable their citizens to have consular help, but not one that seems so elevated that it poses a threat to national security. The planning question is whether abasement is a real requirement of a functioning consulate, and will the Minister show and prove that national security will always be the priority?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and I recognise his long-standing and passionate advocacy for people across the world to be able to practice their faith freely. What I would say in relation to the planning applications in front of us is that all the relevant inquiry information was submitted as part of that independent public inquiry. This department, at the point that the inspector handed us a report, sought that further information specifically in relation to those redacted plans, so that we are able to take a decision taking into account all material planning considerations in this case, and we'll issue that decision, as I've said, on or before the 20th of January, Madam.
Point of order, Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was hoping to ask this point of order of Mr. Speaker because it's a little difficult for you not having been here for most of the urgent question. But at the start of the urgent question, Mr. Speaker made it clear that he was surprised that a minister was being put up who would not be able to answer questions, being a planning minister, rather than a security minister being put up who would be able to answer questions. In my 28 years in this House, I've attended many ministerial statements and the questioning that follows, and many urgent questions since they were introduced. Never before has there been an occasion that I have seen where every question asked on both sides of the House was deeply hostile, as it was today, about what the government was proposing to do. So my question is, if my honourable friend for Rutland and Stamford were to reapply to Mr. Speaker for a similar urgent question in anticipation that an appropriate minister, a security minister, will be put up to answer it, would that be within the rules of parliamentary order and practice?
Point of order, Alicia Kearns. I'm assuming it's on a very similar subject.
It is indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. With due respect to the Minister, I submitted this urgent question as the Shadow National Security Minister to the Home Office for the Security Minister to answer. How do we in this House get answers on the focus that we have? Because all questions bar two were on national security in this chamber, not on planning. And when, particularly, Madam Deputy Speaker, when the more than capable and diligent Security Minister is forced to sit on those benches silent while his colleague attempts to answer those questions that should be being allowed to be put to him.
Can I thank both Right Honourable and Honourable members for their points of order? As they will know, and the Right Honourable gentleman made a very salient point of his long-standing experience in the House. The choice of minister and responding department is a matter for the government, not for the chair. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, and I are rightly frustrated and understand the frustrations that members have. The government front bench has heard those concerns and might reflect upon it. Of course, the Honourable Lady is perfectly free, as is every member, to resubmit an urgent question on this matter, but obviously I cannot comment on whether that will be granted or not. That will be a matter for Mr. Speaker. Which brings us to the next urgent question. I will allow a couple of moments for the front benches to swap over.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you.